New York City transportation has a daily ridership of 3 million. That's a whole lot of moving. Welcome to the elite. And welcome to We Move New York, the podcast. This is the show for the people that move New York. Welcome to We Move New York, the podcast. And here's your host, Q.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another show. This is going to be episode number 8, titled So You Want to Be a Dispatcher. So recently, New York City Transit had the promotion to dispatchers exam on the OA side, and the TA exam is coming up in a few weeks. And as a dispatcher myself, I've been getting a lot of questions about the job, about the test, so on and so forth. And I thought what I'd do is put together a show with some very knowledgeable dispatchers, including myself, to give a better explanation of what being a dispatcher is and what it entails. But before we get into that, let me get into some of the legalities that I got to get out the way. We Move New York, the podcast, is not affiliated with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority or any agencies governed or controlled by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. The information presented on We Move New York, the podcast, is for entertainment purposes only. The podcast hosts and guests do not provide legal, financial, or professional advice. Any reliance on the information presented in this podcast is at your own risk. The opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast as a whole. We Move New York, the podcast, is not responsible for any errors or omissions in the content or for any actions taken based on the information presented. Consult with a professional for advice specific to your situation. I'm tongue tied here. Let me get this last line out. Consult with a professional for advice specific to your situation. There you go. Now that we got out the way, let me talk about my sponsor. My sponsor this evening is Money Bags. Money Bags is a clothing line. He chose to sponsor We Move New York tonight. So let's get a round of applause for that. You know, somebody believing in me, thinking it's worthwhile to promote their product on We Move New York, the podcast. X.com is an exciting urban fashion line that offers a trendy and eclectic range of clothing and accessories. Their collection features high-quality streetwear that showcases bold and vibrant colors, edgy graphics, and innovative designs. The website is user-friendly and easy to navigate with options to shop by category, collection, or look. The clothing and accessories are reasonably priced, making them affordable for customers of all budgets. The shipping is quick and efficient, with orders arriving within the promised time frame. Overall, Moneybags.com is an excellent choice for anyone looking for stylish and affordable urban fashion. Everyone has a bag to get in, so get in yours. Get in your bag and stay in your bag. Yeah, that was Moneybags.com. That's Moneybags with two S's. And if you have a product or service that you'd like to promote on We Move New York, the podcast, send me a message at info@wemovenewyork.com. Spell out New York, and we're going to get into the show. So, from what I understand, the estimated amount of people that that applied for the promotion of New York City Transit dispatcher is about 1,800. But do they really want to become a dispatcher, or do they just want to get off the bus? I don't think a lot of people understand just what it takes to be an New York City Transit dispatcher. A New York City Transit bus dispatcher is responsible for managing the operations and movements of bus fleets within New York City. A dispatcher must monitor the schedule, ensure the drivers are following routes and timetables, and make adjustments as necessary to accommodate delays, accidents, or other issues. They must communicate effectively with drivers, maintenance personnel, and other departments to ensure that buses are running safely and on time. Additionally, a dispatcher may be responsible for responding to emergency situations such as accidents or severe weather to ensure that all passengers are safe and that the buses are rerouted or rescheduled as needed. Dispatchers are also responsible for making sure bus operators are paid correctly, complying with New York 19A medical laws, and a host of other duties that are too lengthy to list. So what I did was I got together a handful of dispatchers that are in various segments of their career. I'm going to bring in Jessica Perez. Jessica Perez has 2 years as a dispatcher. I'm going to do it in the seniority order. Of course, I'm going to bring in Talani Melendez. Talani Melendez is a dispatcher with about 13 years of service on the job. Myself, I have about 21 years as a dispatcher, and I'm going to bring in the illustrious. She needs no introduction, Euphemia Taylor. I like to call her my job mom, big sister, my mentor. I can still call her even though she's retired. I can still call her when I have a situation I don't really understand how it's supposed to be done correctly. Her phone is always still available. 30 with 32 years on the job and retired, Euphemia Taylor. Welcome to the room.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So how's everybody doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Right. So
enjoying the day off.
You get one or you get two.
Say that again.
That was a joke that went over your head. Never mind.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I didn't hear you either.
Listen, the reason why I put together this show, right, as I said before, is that the dispatcher test just came out and the TA test is coming in a few weeks. I don't know exactly what the date is, but all the weeks and days leading up to the test, I've been getting a lot of questions, mostly about the test, but really not about the job. I'm not sure if a lot of people just want to become dispatcher to get off the bus, or if some people really just want to be a dispatcher. So the reason why, again, I put together the show is just give people a better explanation of what's expected of you as a dispatcher, and what are you really looking to get yourself into when you do become a dispatcher. Me, myself, I know when I made dispatcher, I had about 7 years on the job, and my first 30 days, I was ready to go back. And then something just told me, just stick it out, because I didn't think it was really as difficult as it is. Once you get time on the job, things become a little bit easier, but the first time out, and I'll use Jessica as an example, because I remember when Jessica came in at MTV and I trained her at the yard, she was like, "Q, I didn't know you did all this. Y'all make it look so easy." And I was like, it just get easier with time. But initially, once you get your system, when you don't have a system in place and you're not running things like a well-oiled machine, it could be a bit chaotic. Am I correct?
Yes.
So Jessica, right now, as a new dispatcher, what was one of the biggest challenges you had coming from bus operator to dispatcher?
Just the whole transition, like doing depot work, outside work. I mean, everything was just crazy. I didn't understand how big the picture was.
Right.
Thought it was easy. It wasn't. It was hard. And I still struggle sometimes still.
Right, because being new, you're still finding your groove, and you've worked inside, outside. So you haven't worked in just one position long enough to really find the best practices to get everything done.
And that's a good thing, because I got to try everything out, but I'm still trying to figure out what I like the best.
Right.
I haven't figured it out yet.
One of the things that I was told a lot when I became a new dispatcher was stop thinking like a bus operator. Stop thinking like a bus operator. And at first I didn't understand what they meant by stop thinking about a bus operator till it clicked. You have the authority to make decisions on your own without having to first get permission. And that was for me one of the biggest challenges. Like, can I do this or should I do this? And basically it's kind of like, don't do anything, do something. Mistakes will be made and you learn from your mistakes. But after time goes on, you get better in your position, you know how to handle certain situations. It could be the same situation with 5 different ways to handle it, but there's always a better way depending on the situation. It's better explained, like it's specific, situation specific. Am I correct?
Yes.
How about you, Talani? When you first made dispatcher, what was one of the challenges that you faced?
Well, my situation is probably a little bit different because I couldn't wait to get off the bus. So me becoming a dispatcher, it was never in my head that I was going back. I never once, like I hear that a lot. Some drivers say, they're on the fence whether they're going to continue in supervision or they're going to go back to driving. I never had that thought in my head.
At all?
It was like one of the happiest days. Like I was so happy to get off that bus. I was ready for the challenges. I was ready, I like learning new things. So I was like really gun-ho about, this change in my life.
How long did you drive for before
7.5 years. Same as you. I drove for 7.5 years. And I also think that that's very important because when you have drivers that don't have as much time as maybe you and I did, depending on who they are, and they're going into that transition, it may be harder for them because they don't know that much about driving a bus, let alone supervising bus drivers. But in my, experience, I love the transition. I really did.
Taylor, what about you? I know it was a long time ago, and the process was way different. But when you made dispatcher, what was one of the challenges you faced? Not only just a challenge, but I'm pretty sure at the time you were probably one of the only female dispatchers that we may have had at the time. Correct?
That's correct. The I took the dispatcher exam in 1987, right? I was the 5th female ever in Mapstower to be promoted to dispatcher.
Oh wow!
Wow.
But see,
I didn't know.
I had as far as me going back to driving, that was never a thought in my head. See, I got the upper hand because the dispatchers that were there at the time when I was an operator, I used to come in and, we didn't have cameras back then, right?
Right.
And my 2 leaders were senior guys, and I was on the BX-15, matter of fact. When I leave out of 12th Avenue, they sit there and they wait till my time to leave. And then they go across the line dark. So, when you knew, you try to work by the rules. I get to the first bus stop, 60 people there. Yo, B, where you been at? I've been waiting for you. I'm like, yo, MF, you ain't been waiting on me because I don't even know you, right? Get to Amsterdam, same thing, right? Get to Morningside. I said, listen here, let me tell all y'all something. The next person get up here and call me out my name, everybody getting off my bus. Get to the next stop, beat up, last stop. But see, you can't do that no more.
Right? Your times are different.
I was fortunate, like I said, to come on at the time that I did. Because when I took the dispatcher test, I only had 10 months on the job, right?
Okay.
Back then, you only needed 1 year on the job to be promoted. I passed the test the first go around. I would have got promoted when I had like a year and a half on the job, but they had a promotional freeze. So I ended up driving 2 years and 10 months before I got promoted to dispatcher. And the dispatchers that were there.
Hold up. You only drove 2 years and 10 months?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. All right. Don't let that secret out, T.
No, like I said, they didn't have this whole customer service program back then. People used to call up when I used to throw them off the bus, and they call it the depot complaining, right? And I come in and dispatcher say, Miss Taylor, what happened today? I said, man, I'm not taking no nonsense off of these people. So they said, you know what? I'm gonna start calling you Miss No Nonsense Bus Driver. So I'm gonna put you on report, and I'm gonna teach you how to be a dispatcher. Before I got off the bus, I knew how to do, pay people, how to do the extra list, and all that was done manually then. We didn't have a computer. Well, I used to laugh because when you used to report for work, they had the cubby holes with the trip sheet and your transfers, right? And they had your time card in there. And if you came to the window talking slick to the dispatcher, your time card would get thrown in the garbage. And we was getting paid every week. So somebody come in there on Wednesday and it ain't no check for them, we all be laughing because I said, oh, he got smart with one of the dispatchers. They threw his time card in the garbage. And then I stayed on the list. And the next pick was a summer pick. The dispatcher asked me, was I picking the list again? I said, yeah. He said, good. Every Saturday and Sunday, you're going to be back home by 8 o'clock in the morning. So I said, how's that? He said, because the dispatcher that picked the floater on the weekends, he don't know how to do the list. So we're going to put you on report. He going to call you. You come up here, you do the list, make the copies, put it up, and then you can go home. And so, like I said, I was gifted from even before I got off the bus.
So you kind of had the upper hand on the competition, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things I want to reflect on that you touched on, you said about making pay manually. Like I remember when I first made dispatcher, we had the Wang system where you had the black screen with the spinach colored letters and like cut slips, any exceptions, everything had to be paid manually. And I remember you actually had to sit and do the math for every cut slip. You had to do the math for every X, every medical. It was a lot of late nights just figuring it out. But sometimes you after doing it every night, you commit the memory what the X's was. So with that being said, like I've seen the changes in technology. Like just you probably never had to do that. Talani probably never had to do that. Like now when people ask me like how does this get paid or how you figure it out, I'm like I haven't done that in so long. Like take the class because I'm not. It's like algebra. It's one of those things. If you don't do it enough, you lose it. And I haven't worked the crew in a while. But in your opinions, how do you feel like technologies have affected the role of a dispatcher?
technology is good in one sense and is bad in another. Just for example, all of us sitting here, how many numbers that's since stored in your phone do you know by heart?
Not one. If I got arrested,
maybe my mother's only.
Not even that. If I got arrested, the only number I know to call is 911.
That's the problem.
That's the
technology
problem. Yep.
have put us in a position where we don't think, we don't memorize things, and it's sad because I had a lot of people telling me, oh well, you showing me how to do the math. UTS does all the work. No, it doesn't. I said, if you think, if UTS did all the work, why do you have to go to the general periodically for a pay adjustment? You have to know how to count. Right. It's just like even since I've been retired, anybody who knows me know that if you got a question, you can always call me, right? Big problem that they got now is, say for instance, if an operator got an early run, right? They finish by 1-2 o'clock, and they come in and they see a half of a run is open, and the run makes a relief on the second half, right? A lot of dispatchers is not paying these people properly because they supposed to get 10 minutes for reporting and the travel time to go make the relief on time. Right. They just paying them from whenever that second half started. So like I tell any operator I know that's aspiring to be a dispatcher, it's important for you to know how to count. I used to tell operators all the time, like if they do something extra, I tell them, oh, well, you're gonna get paid this, and this. They was like, what? I didn't know that. I said, listen, how do you come to work every day and don't know how to calculate your own pay? I said, if there was a way for me to filter money from your time card into my bank account, I'd have been rich a long time ago. I could cheat people every day and they wouldn't even know the difference.
It was that you say that when I made dispatcher and I started paying people, I said to myself, the Transit Authority owes me a lot of money. A lot of money, because I never, and we didn't have a way of checking our pay back then. So I didn't know if I was getting paid correctly until I made this. I was like, wow, I never asked for what is a meal penalty at the time, or make sure I got the travel time. My pay was just my pay. So Lonnie, I know you've seen the transition in technology with some of the things, as far as like, especially working the yard. I don't think Jess may have not done paper and pencil with the paper and pencil tallies. Lonnie, you did paper tallies, correct?
Yeah, I was the last class. Actually, my class was the last class to do paper tallies.
Right. Like
right
myself.
After that, that's when they had the EBS machine and then the tablet. But I think that the paper tallies was an important thing to learn. I think they're still teaching that in Tariga. I still think that they're right, Jessica. Are they teaching you that?
They the day that our instructor took us to Flushing, Queens, with all those lines, when we was in training, one day she showed us how to do the paper tally, but it was so many buses and so much going on.
So they couldn't survive. So they wouldn't be able to survive.
I don't think any of us caught on that day, how to do it. It was just it wasn't enough training. I could say that.
Right. So
they need to teach them how to do the paper tallies, because what if you work in a shuttle? There's nothing in the in the tablet for shuttle tallies. I know the last time I worked the shuttle, it was a dispatcher maybe had like a year on the job. I stayed with her for like an hour showing her how to do the tallies from the recap. She didn't know how to do it.
Wow. Yeah. It's been a while since I did that, but you just
I've never done a shuttle, so I guess I don't know how to do it either.
Even learning yard track, a lot of the new dispatchers coming in, they've never done the track by hand. So
sometimes I still do the track by hand, because for me, since I've done it for so many years by hand, I'm faster than the computer when it comes to some things. I'm like, let me just knock this out on paper and pencil. If I got a ramp line of operators that need to get out the door, I'm like, forget the yard track, because I can get them out the door faster than I can put it inside the computer and assign.
Exactly.
Right.
And then also sometimes if there's a problem, it's like, say you issue an operator a bus and for whatever reason they knock the bus down. Now you got to put the bus back into the yard track, erase this and erase that. Right. But once it's out the system, it's out the system. It's kind of like, well, where was that bus parked? So sometimes I totally don't use that. I revert back to paper and pencil, what I know, what I was more efficient at.
Well,
But
I have one thing that I always thought about when it comes to technology. I really think that the tablet is doing a disservice, right?
okay,
Because even the EBS machine, at least you were still booking buses.
right,
So we had that handheld, but when the bus passed, you still were responsible for booking that bus.
right.
But now with the tablet, it's totally GPS. To
Mhm.
me, that makes the dispatcher on the road a little bit lackadaisy. So now they're not responsible to book buses, right? So they could be on their phone, they could be doing a lot of things. They don't necessarily have to pay attention to it. But I think that booking the bus made the dispatcher more efficient, just in my opinion.
Right, because
Because now you are responsible for when that bus
bus
passed
pass
you,
through.
or whatever, or when the GPS is not always effective. I had did a little time in bus track, and it was always off.
Mm.
You could call an operator and say, operator, you're running 5-6 minutes ahead, and they're sitting at the end of the line.
Right.
Yes,
So
that
technology has its glitch also.
It's glitches also, right? So you work, Talani, you've worked bus track, you worked mobile, you
I
work.
actually was on the Super 12 list. I don't know. I know that you guys, Jessica may not know too much about it, but I know you guys know when they were doing the layoffs, we were the last class to get hired. So actually, the three people, me, Velasquez, that's also at MTV, and his name is Watkins. He's retired now. We were the last three hirees, and there was a possibility that they were going to send us back to driving, and then lay off the last 9
Dispatches,
dispatchers.
I remember that.
So they came up with this scheme
Hmm.
to cut the overtime throughout the whole system and supposedly save our jobs. So they took the 9 last dispatchers, the 3 probies, and they put us together and called us the Super 12 list.
Okay.
They sent us throughout the whole system to soak up the overtime. So I actually worked Brooklyn, Queens. The only borough I never worked was Staten Island, but I did Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Manhattan. Plus I did MTA bus. I did TA. I've done
You ran
everything,
the whole
every
gamut.
mobile. And I think it made me a more proficient dispatcher because
Right.
I've done it all. But we were the class that, we went. You could be in Brooklyn one day, 2 to 10, and then the Bronx 6 to 2. They
Right.
had no love for us.
Right. So being that you work so many places, right? One of the I won't say basically a problem I have, but a lot of times somebody asks me, "What do you do for a living?" And I say, "I'm a dispatcher for New York City Transit." And they the first thing is for trains. I'm like, "No, for buses." And then they say, "Okay, what does that entail?" And sometimes I'm like, it entails so many things. It's just not
Yes.
giving out buses. It depends on what role, or this is how I would explain to them what role I chose to pick for the 6 months. I could be a general dispatcher, crew dispatcher. I could be the yard dispatcher. I could work a mobile. I could work bus track. I could work 19A. It simply cannot just be summed up in just saying I'm a bus dispatcher. It's not that simple.
Right.
And we've all worked in different roles. Which role do you guys prefer? Me, I found my groove. I'm in the yard. I'm not going anywhere unless I have to. But I know Jessica, she went to a mobile, and I was like, "You picked a mobile? Wow." Talani, she's always bouncing around. And I remember when Taylor
But I love the
Taylor left
crew.
us for years to go train MTA bus on UTS. But
Yeah.
you'd be anywhere and see Taylor working somewhere. Be like, she's a jack of all trades, master of all. So what I know everyone has their preferences. So starting with Jessica, what's your preference?
Right now, what I'm doing now, the mobile.
You like the mobile, you like the action.
Yeah.
Every day is different, right?
Every
You never
day
know
is
what you're gonna
different.
expect.
Right.
What about you,
And-
Talani?
I love the crew. I'm a crew dispatcher. I mean, I'm just starting to be able to pick what I want.
Uh-huh.
So that's the only reason why I kind of bounced around. But I always knew that my love was working in the crew. I love helping the drivers. I just like everything that it entails.
Found your groove. What about you, T?
I like the best trick I like to work was the crew. I picked the general, PM general, one time for one pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, nah, this is gonna get me in trouble because I come in there, anything that's in the tray, the first 2-3 hours, I do it. And then next thing you know, I'm sitting there doing the bobblehead at the desk. I said, nah, I gotta get out of here. This is gonna get me in trouble. Like I said, the crew, I liked it because the time went by fast because you interacting with people, solving issues, so I loved it.
Yeah. For me, I've always preferred working inside the depots instead of outside. A lot of new dispatchers or people that are on the list become dispatcher, they get intimidated about the idea of coming inside and working inside the depot, because now you got to deal with computers and reports and stuff like that. What type of advice would you have to give them, that anyone is thinking of picking inside? Because I always tell people simply like this: pick inside, everyone's going to help you, right? No one wants to see you fail, and no one wants to have to fix your work, mainly. Also, if there's someone at the depot that doesn't know how to handle whatever the situation is, that it may be a pay or rule or something like that, you could always call another dispatcher at another depot. This was just something that I used to do when I worked the overnights as a new dispatcher, and we had the old computer system, and the whole thing was just shut down, and I didn't even know how to reboot it. So a lot of times I would have to call someone at a whole nother depot and say, listen, the system went down, like, how do I bring this thing back up? And they'd walk me through bringing it back up or straighten out someone's pay and things like that. So what advice would you give to someone that may want to pick inside a depot, but maybe feeling a little intimidated by it?
I would say to do it, because it's a learning experience. And I had the best, though. I had Miss Melinda show me everything, but she learned from the best too.
I had Taylor.
From Miss
Taylor. I had
Taylor.
the best too. So
look, yeah, real talk. I had Taylor, right? Let me tell you a story, quick fast. My new dispatcher. One day Taylor told me I had the crew in the AM. I thought, you know, I'm feeling a little cocky and I got this, whatever. T had the general in the back. She came in the front and she's like, just check on me. And she's looking at the open work and she's like, yo, what did I tell you about? Real talk. She's like, what did I tell you about covering the X's when we down bodies? And I'm like, oh, snap. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to cover the X's. I was supposed to cover the full runs. And real talk, she said, yo, you effing up. Real talk, you effing up. The other day you didn't do this. The other day you didn't do that. I straightened out this. And she went down a list of things. I said, you know what? Let me start taking this a little more serious. So I got to thank you, T. I got to tip my hat and salute you. Like, you really made me tighten it up. And from that, there's been times I pulled dispatchers aside, like, yo, tighten it up, because you screwing up. Like, there's just little things that you ain't doing that you overlooking that should be done. I know we all make mistakes. And sometimes we don't even want to do the whole job. And I get it. But if you're going to leave some work, just let me know, hey, I didn't do XYZ. I'll take care of it. Sometimes it's not too difficult, but you do want to relieve somebody that at least did their job. But, you know, it's nothing wrong with correcting a dispatcher that's not doing the right thing or may need help in some areas that you see they need help and they may be lacking. They may be afraid to open up and say, hey, I don't know this. There's been plenty of times when I'm working the yard and someone was scheduled to work the crew and they felt they couldn't handle it. And I went upstairs and handled it. But I was like, listen, if you don't work the crew, you're never going to learn to work the crew. You only get better at doing it. And crew is like the brains of the whole operation. The general, I consider the backbone. But if you can handle the crew, it's a fast-paced, high pressure environment. And if you can handle that, you can work in any other situation and system within transit, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
T, you remember that?
Yeah. At least you got off good with a tongue lashing, right? I got a funny story to share. I trained GQ in the crew, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
He was with me for a week, right? And then the next week they was gonna send him another couple of days. And I'm looking at the weather forecast, and I seen it was a snowstorm coming. So I went in and put it for AVA day. Mm-hmm. So about half an hour before I got ready to leave, right? He said, "Oh, I'm in here with you tomorrow, big sis." I said, "Nah, you in here by yourself." He was like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you in here by yourself." I said, "Listen, this is how it's gonna go. The phone was gonna be ringing off the hook. Mm-hmm. Keep up with the phone calls." I said, "You're not gonna be able to open up every run as you take the call, because that's how crazy it's gonna get. Get yourself a legal pad and write everything down. And then, you know, when your relief come in, whatever you didn't do in the system, when your relief come, you go in the back in the general and do it, right?" So the next day I came in, right? I said, "Yo, how'd you do yesterday?" He said, "I handled it." He said, "But you gave me a goddamn baptism by fire." How's you gonna learn?
Yeah. That's another important thing. Like, if any soon to be dispatchers watching the show and you come inside, because sometimes new dispatchers come right into a depot. One of the things you have to learn to do is prioritize what's important, what needs to be done now, and what can wait. Like, you could take a sick call, get the information. Just write it down. Remember to put this guy in so you could get the run open and put another operator on the run and cover the run and get the run out the door. And that's one of the things that I've learned to do when I'm in the crew is like you said, just get a piece of scrap paper and a pen when it's getting crazy and just start jotting things down. And when you get back to it, draw a line through it and move on to the next one. Because especially during a snowstorm, it can get real crazy when you have about 100 people that were supposed to be scheduled to work that's not showing up, and you got another 25 that just happen to be there, and you're trying to cover 75 pieces of work and you don't have nobody. So, and all that got to be entered in the computer, So one of the things I really want to emphasize, if you're thinking about coming to inside a depot, learn how to prioritize what's important.
And also, one thing I noticed about the newcomers, they have to start learning that it's okay to make a decision. Right. I think that's probably the biggest transition between operator and dispatcher. Now you have to learn how to make a decision. Mm-hmm. The management, they understand that sometimes things may not go perfect, but they don't have you there just to take up space. They want you to make a decision.
Whether it's right or wrong, they want you to just try to do it.
Right. You got to do something. If something happens, you make a decision. If the general superintendent doesn't agree with the decision that you made, he or she'll have a conversation with you about it, and they'll tell you how to take care of it the next time. But anybody who's, like I said, aspiring to be a dispatcher, I encourage people to learn everything. And if you pick inside of a depot, come with a 3-subject notebook to take notes, right?
A few.
I know in the last 5 or 6 years that I worked, I seen people get promoted to dispatcher, and they come in for training. And when I see them the week before, I tell them, go to the store and get a notebook. Have your notebook when you come in on Monday. I'm sitting there, guy comes in, I'm explaining to him, how to start things off. And I said, listen, because first thing he want to do is tell somebody to fix their tie. I said, that's not important. I said, focus on this. Learn your job first. Then we'll get into that, right? So it just dawned on me. I said, wait a minute. Where's your notebook at, right? I'll kid you not. He reached in his shirt pocket and pulled out this little book, right? And I'm like, if you go write in that phone numbers, I said, because all this stuff I'm about to drop on you, you're gonna need an encyclopedia to write it down.
Right. Right.
He didn't want to listen. He didn't want to take notes. And he did something one day to an operator, and I called him out about it. I spoke to him personally. If he gets mad, he stopped speaking, right? So about 2 weeks later, I relieved him in the crew. As soon as I walk in, now mind you, he ain't spoke to me in 2 weeks. Oh, we got a problem. I said, I ain't got no problem. I just got here. What happened? You know how you run your excessive spread of 8-hour rule reports?
Right.
A guy had a change of assignment for that day. He paid the guy a cut slip, which put him in an 8-hour rule violation, and he didn't take the operator off his run. So I'm like, wait a minute. He said, when he told me about the 8-hour rule violation for the cut slip, I said, well, who paid the cut slip? He said, I did. I said, see, this is why I told you to take notes, because I specifically remember I told him, when you pay a cut slip, it's an 8-hour rule violation, you're going to get that gray box that pops up. Right. Don't ignore it. If it says assigning this will cause insufficient rest, you take the operator, go into the next day, take the operator off their run and find something for them that gives them 8 hours off. Then you go back in and pay the cut slip. But you don't want to listen, so you got to handle it. So long story short, that was like the 4th time that he had got written up for something that I had told him don't do and told him to write down, and he refused to write it down. He ended up getting disqualified from picking inside work.
Yeah, and that's something also I see a lot of new dispatchers don't. When I made dispatch and was trained inside, I worked with 3 screens: today's, yesterday's, and tomorrow's. Yeah. Now I don't see a lot of dispatchers. They usually just work with today's screen. And
that's
lazy.
Well, that's laziness. In defense of that, with this new system that they have, the more screens you put up, the more it freezes.
Yeah, slower. That's true.
So it's not a good system at all. Because that's how I was taught too, to always have at least 2 up. But I noticed when I try to do that, a lot of times the screen freezes. Now when you try to print or anything, it gives you an issue. So
listen, that's overtime. What's wrong with you? Right? That's overtime.
But that technology, their technology sucks.
Yeah, well, when UTS was enacted, it wasn't web based, so it was really fast. It was super fast.
Right.
Once it went web based, it was just a drag. Like again,
the more depots that they brought in, the slower it got.
Slowed it down. But some aspects I used to be faster than. Now I'm faster than the computer in certain things, and some things it's like I don't even want to do this. It's going to be such a drag when it freezes. Got to reset, come out, and come back in. But back to what we were saying, like prioritizing and taking notes. Taking notes is so important. I've been the dispatcher now, pick dispatcher now for me about 3 or 4 years. I cycled through times that by 4, whatever that math is. I still go to my notes when it comes to setting up the pick, cleaning up the pick, creating the X's, because the pick, you don't want to mess up the pick. You don't want to be the dispatcher.
And how many weeks do you do that pick? Because by the time that's over and you ready again for the next year, you done forgot all that stuff, right?
Exactly. That's why I still go. It's not so being a pick dispatcher is not like being the crew dispatcher where you work it every day, and you've been 30 days, you get a pretty more efficient. With the pick, is once every 4 months, and it's like it's the equivalent of only doing it 4 times a year. So there's more room for error because the last time you did it was 3 months ago. It's like being a new crew dispatcher on the list and never working the crew again for 3 months, and then management expects you to know everything because you've been a dispatcher now for 3 months. Like that's impossible. I've been a dispatcher 3 months, but I've only worked the crew twice. And that's one of the things that I tell when there's a new dispatcher, like, okay, if you're upstairs, if you need anything, I'm downstairs in the yard. Don't be afraid to call me. If I got to come up, if I got some dead time, I'll come up and I'll show you how to do that. It's never a problem. So again, I stress it all the time. If you have any qualms about coming inside and you're afraid or intimidated, trust me, every dispatcher in the depot will help you. I rarely have ever heard about a dispatcher not helping out a new dispatcher when they come across a situation or a problem that they don't understand. So T, how's been retirement been for you?
It's a beautiful thing. I get up when I get up. I go to bed when I feel like it. Like a couple of nights ago, I was up all night long putting together a table that I had ordered from off of Amazon. The freedom is amazing. I miss the daily interaction with people, but I don't miss the job.
Right. I understand what you're saying. So for the viewers that are watching, if you don't know, or maybe you do, Miss Taylor, she gives dispatcher classes, and anytime anybody asks me anything about dispatcher class and tests and things like that, I always refer him or her to Taylor to take her class. She's one of the most knowledgeable dispatchers that I've known in the system. And again, I'll repeat it 1,000 times. Anytime I need to know something, I give her a call first before I call anybody else. Even if she knows the job, there's times that I'm like, nah, I'll let it alone. But what is one of the things that you notice about the new crop of people that are coming to take your class and want to become dispatchers, and what do you think their expectations of the job is?
You got a lot. I got like a lot of mixed feelings. You got a lot of people that's entering the workforce now. They have a sense of entitlement. Right. They don't understand. You entered into a system that's seniority based, right? When you first come in, you got to work all the crap until you work your way up and can do better, right? Now, I'm telling people, I got 32 and a half years of experience doing the job that you're trying to get. And I'm explaining to them different rules. A couple of them, they want to sit there and debate me on the rules. I say, y'all, check this out. These rules have been in place since before I came here, and they're not going to change because, to your liking. So if you don't start a debate with me, because it's not going to go well for you. Just give you an example of how their mentality is.
Right.
With the dispatcher selection criteria, right? I read them the memo regarding that. And in 2002, they revised it. They can't hold FMLA absences against you when you getting considered for dispatcher. So on a regular, when they evaluate you, they go back 3 years on your record. 2 years prior to you getting appointed to being a dispatcher, you can't have no more than 3 instances for a total of 7 days, right? And I read the whole memo to them, and then I ask, anybody have any questions? Guy raises his hand. I said, what's your question? He goes, oh, this dispatcher in my depot don't like me. I said, stop right there. What made you come to the conclusion that the dispatcher don't like you? FMLA for his kid. And he calls out 15 minutes before his run reports, and the dispatcher gives him a hard time. So everybody in the class turned around and looked at him and said, nah, you supposed to call in an hour before, right? And he's arguing with them. I said, whoa, time out. I said, listen, I don't care what you have pre-approved. The rules is the rules. If you're not coming to work, you're required to call out at least an hour before your tour. I said, so now what I'm gathering from what you just told me is you want to circumvent the system. And now because the dispatcher states the rules to you, now you want to make it personal. She don't give a damn about you. Right. And what it is the dispatcher job is to cover the open work, right? Now, say for instance, she don't have no report people sitting there, right? She has two other options to fill that work. Either call somebody in off the RDO list or look down the report and clear time sheet, see if somebody who do they know that works later would be willing to come in earlier for an earlier run. I said, but either way, we have to allow them an hour to get there, you know? So he said something else to me. So I said, dude, listen, what you saying violates all laws of probability. What's the probability of your son having an asthma attack every time 15 minutes before you're supposed to be at work? I said, okay, this is what I'm going to give you as your homework assignment because we're not going to go back and forth. When you go to work tomorrow, bring me a copy of the memo on transit stationery that says that because you have FMLA, you can call out 15 minutes before. So he comes in the next week, quiet as a mouse. I ain't say nothing to him. I let it go for a little while. So I said, yo, I forgot something. Somebody in here owed me something. So everybody looking around, what's she talking about? I said, yo, where's the memo that says that because you got FMLA, you can call out 15 minutes before? He goes, there is none. I said, I ain't hear you. There is none. I said, speak up. You was loud last week, you know? I said, see, this is what I'm telling you. You cannot change the rules to your liking. I said, and a lot of y'all in here abuse FMLA because from what you're telling me, you're abusing it, you know? And I have a problem with them is you have people who use FMLA legitimately. The ones that's the bullshit artists that you see calling out FMLA every Saturday or the day before their days off, they don't need to be dispatchers because they're bringing that same jacked up mentality into being a dispatcher.
Yeah, correct. Then leaving you stuck with no relief. Speaking on that, right? So a lot of people say they don't want to pick into a depot because they don't want to get stuck by having no relief. And I try to tell them that rarely happens, right? And if it does happen, there's usually somebody in the depot that wants to take the overtime, so you don't really have to worry about that. But there's, we have that unwritten rule, the lowest man on the totem pole has to do the OT. And I like that rule, that unwritten rule, because I'm number 2 in the depot, so I never really have to worry about that on my shift. But one of the things, like, we have with the operators, if they have an entitlement mentality as an operator, again, like you said, T, that's going to transfer to them being a dispatcher, and you have to, like, I like to say, like, a lot of people say, why are you the way you are as a dispatcher? And I look at it like this. I say we have 2 types of customers. We have external customers and we have internal customers, right? The riding public I view as our external customers. The people that I supervise, I consider my internal customers. So, like, when somebody calls on the phone, I answer the phone. I don't say, hey, it's Q. I MTV Yard Wilson, because that's my real name. And sometimes people are like, who's Wilson? I'm like, it's me. I'm not going to answer the phone Q, Yeah. And I try to have a rapport with the people I supervise because I look at them as my customers, because they come to me sometimes for information about their pay, information about the time they work, information about where does this I got on the shuttle. I don't know where this go. I got directions, but I can't understand it. And I look at them as a customer, like, hey, let me show you, go this route, go that route. No, you cannot go that route. Or if they have a question about a rule or regulation, and if I can answer it, like I said, it's just like calling customer service for your credit card and you're trying to find out, hey, how many reward points do I have? Sometimes, you can look at it on online, but if I have the information and I can give it to you, make it a little bit easier, I will. Now, sometimes I'll bust your chops about it, about being lazy and not using your head and thinking about it. But I'll try to help everyone out as much as I can.
And I think that's a good point, because the communication between the dispatcher and the driver is very important. The communication. Like, I saw a list the other day of the TA dispatchers that are about to take the test. And a lot of them, I'm like, you have to be a people person.
Yeah.
You have to be a person that likes to communicate, likes to help. If you're a person that you don't want to deal with anything, I mean, it's not the job for you, because you have to come in contact with the public, like you said, your external, and your drivers, maybe even drivers that you drove with.
Right.
But your communication skills are so important with this job.
Right. And
you have to be able to communicate.
Me personally, I think in the morning between 6 and 9 o'clock, I may interact with over 115 operators. And that's 115 different personalities, and it's just, I mean, you after a while you get to know people, but it's just the gamut runs just as various as the ride in public. Sometimes you don't know who's coming in a good mood or a bad mood, and sometimes even as a dispatcher, there's times when you find yourself consoling a person because you may just ask them, "Hey, how you doing?" and they burst down in tears and like, "Hey, what's going on?" This person can't go down the road down. So you have a talk with them like, "Are you good? Do you need a moment to get yourself together? What's going on?" And if they choose to confide in you, you can let them confide in you. But I always tell people, keep that keep that to yourself. Do not spread a person's business. They trusted you to open up and share something that's very personal to them. So keep that and keep those secrets, if you want to call them secrets, and take them to your grave, because they trusted you. They may have looked up to you as somebody because you're the supervisor or what have you, or somebody that they trusted. But as a dispatcher, you will find a lot of times that people are sharing a lot of personal information with you, and it's because they trust you and they may have looked up to you and they may really value your advice. So that's another thing that a lot of people don't that no one talks about, because that's not in the job description. Sometimes it's almost like being a bartender, and as I don't know, like how did we get into this conversation? But it'd be a deep conversation about something that's going on in someone's life, and this time I'm like, wow, I can't believe you told me this. But I try to console the person or give them the best advice that I can, and if I feel I'm not qualified to really give the answer, I tell, listen, I really don't know. If I can refer you to somebody that I know, or I'll let them take it there. But again, I keep that information, I keep it to myself.
What you just stated is real important, and I guess like I tell people that I've encountered, being a dispatcher is more than just doing the job. You have to use compassion too when you're dealing with people. It's just like Q said, you got everybody got something going on in their life. People have come to me with situations, and the office of the chaplain is a good place to refer people to. Right. You tell them everything is confidential down there. They have marriage counseling. They have, if you have like a wayward kid, they have child therapists and all of that stuff. And so it's a lot of services that's available. But like I said, being a dispatcher, be a human being too.
First and foremost, right?
Exactly. Because you only as good, the dispatcher is only as good as the people that they supervise,
Right.
All the years I've been a dispatcher, I never had a problem getting operators to cooperate with me to do something, because I knew how to talk to people and treat them. It's just like if they needed something, they came to me once in a blue moon and asked, for an earlier run or something like that, and it was within my power to do it, I would do it. Because see, in this occupation, especially when you work in a crew, one hand wash the other, and they both wash the face. You take care of this guy today, and then tomorrow or next week you might need him to do something for you, and he'd be like, "For you, sure, no problem."
That's right.
All right. And Jess, I'm going to pick on you a little bit, because I remember one time when you were new, I visited you on your post, and you was like, "Q, I got a problem with this guy, and I don't know if I should write a violation." And you asked me for my advice, and what I told you is, listen, I don't write violations. I rarely write violations. There's some things that you have to write a violation for, but I really write violations because I feel like I can handle the problem myself, and writing a violation means that I can't handle the problem. What I usually do, if there's a situation and someone's constantly doing the wrong thing, I usually pull them to the side and have a talk to them as adults. Like, listen, I noticed this going on, whatever. Let's tighten it up. Let's bring it to an end. And that usually right there, ends. There's no more conversation to have after that. I feel that I like to have a working relationship with the people that I supervise for one of the same exact reasons as Taylor said. Like, you take care of me today, I take care of you tomorrow. And because we work as a team to make sure that the depot and transportation is provided to the riding public. It's not just me, it's not just you, it's all of us together coming together as a team to make sure that this thing runs together and smoothly. And it's not always going to be smooth, you know.
I took your advice.
Yeah.
And I don't write anybody up now. I just do like, stop playing with me, or I have that little talk with them and they get it. Like, I talk to them like if I'm talking to like a friend.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is what we have to do, and you got to listen to me. I don't want you to get no problems, and I don't want my job in jeopardy either. So let's just do what we're supposed to do here.
Right. And sometimes, like, T was infamous for this. Like, one day you come to the crew and he's like, T in a bad mood, and she'll give you the business, but tomorrow she's like, hey, you want lunch? You're like, hey, what happened? I thought you was mad at me, and it was nothing personal until I became a crew dispatcher. And it's just like, as an operator, that one person could ruin your day. It's the same thing sometimes as a dispatcher. And a lot of people figure, like, once they get off the bus, they're not going to have to deal with the BS like from the riding public. And one of the things I noticed as a dispatcher on post is that, as opposed to a driver, when you're a driver and someone on the bus has a complaint, they're going to complain, they're going to get off at their stop and go about their business. But however, when you're on post and someone has a complaint, they're going to stand there with you on post until they voice their complaint in its entirety. And that was one of the things I'd rather be a driver, because this person would have got off 15 minutes ago, but now this person can stand here for 30 minutes to just try to berate me about bus service because there's a parade downtown. Everyone knows there's a parade downtown. No one's expecting bus service to run on time but you. So I want to thank everyone for coming on to the show tonight. I know you guys have busy lives, and all of us, except with the exception of one person, work tomorrow. But thank you again for coming on to episode 8 of We Move New York, the podcast. So You Want to Be a Dispatcher. I hope to all aspiring dispatchers out there that some of the information here was useful. And again, if you see myself, Talani, or Jess and T in street clothes, and you have a question about the job, feel free to ask any of us. I'm sure we'll be able to give you the information. Thank you for listening, and thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
And keep them checks rolling in for me. Right? Good night.
All right.
Good night.